Howdy, everyone. All right, so I am now moving on to applying vinyl to the wings. So the white vinyl on the tail pieces are now finished. I do have a little bit of work to do on the vertical stabilizer and the rudder, and I'll get back to that a little bit later. But for now, the white on the tail pieces are finished, and I am now starting on the wings. So I elected to start with the flaps and ailerons just because, again, they're small pieces, they're easy to handle, and I could do it on the bench. And they're roughly the same size as the tail pieces, so I'm kind of familiar with how things are going to work and how things are going to go together. So this is the first flap, and it's just more of the same as the tail pieces, right? So again, you do the dirty work on a bench and then clean that really well, the bench and the piece with a vacuum cleaner just to pick up the debris. Put down a clean sheet, clean everything really well, and then start the vinyl application. And you'll note, again, as I work on these pieces, you'll note that after everything is clean and I start the actual vinyl, that I pull the vinyl backing out from underneath a little bit at a time. The reason I do that is one, it's easier to handle the vinyl. If you pull the back off completely, now you have to deal with that entire piece of vinyl, and the chances of trapping air bubbles are quite high. The way that I do it is I pull the backing off a little bit at a time. So, in effect, I'm working small sections of vinyl at a time and pulling the vinyl or pulling the backer off and then working it that way a little at a time basically diminishes air bubbles to zero. You will get some here and there, but it drastically reduces the chances of trapping air bubbles. And like I said, it's just easier to work with, at least for me. So again, any vinyl that hangs over a hard edge, I go ahead and trim those areas with an X-Acto blade. And any vinyl that is going to overlap itself or potentially come up to and stop short of like a fiberglass piece, I don't want to run a blade on that. So I'll just go ahead and put down the cut tape for those areas to cut the vinyl. And then, of course, after that, it's applying the heat to soften the adhesive and make it flow into the air channels and just make sure that everything is stuck really uniformly to the piece itself. And then another thing that I wanted to bring up, I don't know if I've talked about this before, but when I start my initial acetone cleaning, like here, you'll note that I focus on the rivet heads. And the reason I do that is when I had originally built these pieces, I had used tape on whatever tool I was using to drive the rivet, or I'd just tape the rivet head itself, such as, let's just say, as what is it? Back riveting. The rivet heads would get taped in place before back riveting. So when I do the initial acetone clean, I focus on the rivet heads just to get the any tape residue off of the rivet heads. And if there was tape residue, remember these pieces have been sitting, so that collects dust. So I just wanted to make sure the rivet heads were good and clean. And of course, by doing so, you will notice any rivets that may not be perfectly flat or perfectly flush, and you can fix them at that time. So I focus on the heads first, and then after that, of course, I wipe down the entire part and then move on to the actual vinyl. So this is, I believe, that was the first flap, and now I've moved on to the second flap. And again, I'm not capturing everything on these time lapse videos, but of course, this flap has already been uh, sanded if needed, rivet heads dealt with, whatever the dirty work, and now moved on to the clean vinyl application. I believe I have a video coming up after this. I don't know when I'll actually post it, but I believe the next video is a real time video where I kind of go back and explain everything that you've been watching here on this particular time lapse. So there'll probably be a lot of repetitive information, but at least with the real time video, I think it's a little bit more clear and a little bit easier to understand than watching a time lapse. So I believe that will be next. And then, of course, we have to tackle the actual wing itself. So those videos will be coming. Thanks for stopping in, and I will talk to you guys later.